Hi, Mary. How are you? That's a really good question. I never really know what to talk about. Hmm. I know, and I've never really done a podcast, so it's entirely new to me. Sure, why not? What do you want to know? Because I might be able to provide some insight on a couple things. I don't know. Well, that's always good. Hmm. That's that's a good question. So for me, I know it can become a little bit hard to distinguish what some people may or may not know because technology is always changing, and I know people are growing up with it nowadays, and they didn't used to do that. So uh, some people grow up around it. They know the latest trends. They know the latest gadgets. They know how everything works. Some people they don't grow up around it. They don't have it around in their lives when they're kids or even when they're teenagers, and it takes them a few extra years to kind of get to know things. Um, I know for me, I'm kind of right in the middle of that. I'm the stereotypical '90s kid, so I kind of grew up like right as things are starting to take off, right as all the OG stuff that you see online, like all the computer games, consoles, and everything. All my friends had consoles. So I kind of grew up with some things, even though I didn't necessarily have it myself at my house. Um, but I did kind of take a keen interest in electronics, and I did start um, a recycling business and taking computers apart,
Oh,
recycling them, rebuilding them, reselling them, fixing them
yeah.
up, and reselling them. And so I kind of self-taught myself a lot about computers that way.
Oh.
And that's kind of what I dove into. And my goodness, when did I start doing that? Let me think. That was around 2008. So
Yeah.
what, 15 years ago, something like that.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel old. um, no, yeah, so I started doing that at a really young age. And it was kind of a mix of things when I first got started because I didn't really know exactly what I was into exactly. That didn't come
Yeah.
along until later. But I kind of did a lot of things, electronics, um, computers, AV stuff, audiovisual stuff,
Yeah.
um, all that kind of stuff. It was kind of a thing for me. And then of course now here I am, having actually just graduated college this past Friday with a bachelor's degree in computer science. So you can see how far along I've come in the computer world.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's always something new to learn about electronics and computers, and that's kind of why I like it. Is because even though I may not be a programmer person, I'll be the first to admit that. Don't ask me how I squeaked by getting a bachelor's in computer science when that is majority programming. Don't ask me how I did that.
I'm not going to
But
because I most likely wouldn't have made it that far.
but I like hardware. That's why I did the recycling business, right? Fixing and
Yeah.
repairing computers, because I like the hardware. I'm very hardware oriented. I like seeing how things work physically. I'm a physical person like that.
Yeah.
So I always like finding out how things interact, how things interconnect. That's kind of why I guess I've liked doing electricity and electronics kind of stuff, like
Yeah.
wiring stuff. Um, and so that's kind of where I'm headed right now, at least in my career, is I work in AV, right? So I work actually for the
Mhm.
college that I graduated from, and I worked there since, let me see, this is 2023, so January 2022 is when I started.
Yeah.
I started as a student worker, part time, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, Not necessarily, obviously. I shouldn't say that. It's not obvious to everybody. It works differently at different places.
Yeah.
But yeah, started a year ago, January 2022, as a student worker, and that's part time. Over the course of that year, had a couple of pay raises, had a couple of different changes. Things happen. Most pretty much all positives, to be perfectly honest. And then we had some changeover in staff. Some people leave our team, and we had a couple of full-time positions open up, including one that we actually kind of more or less created out of a different position that we kind of scrapped, just logistics, things like that, HR stuff. And they created my position, and so they were like, hey, you'd be the perfect one if you're looking for a job to stay here, which I kind of was, because I mean, this is when did this all start happening? This all started happening, getting talked about in the summer, late summer, like last July. It didn't become an actual concrete happening until right around December or January of this year. And then once it get posted, I applied for it, had my interview, and it went really, really well. They actually told me there were a couple of very well qualified applicants that I was definitely in running for. That it was kind of a come down to a decision between who is the better applicant, and they gave me some specific things as to why they went with me, not including the fact that I was a student worker, and so I'm already in the system. I already know the campus. I already know how everything works, so they wouldn't have to spend time bringing somebody else up to speed, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just due to timing, that was what worked easier. So that was a plus in my favor. Another plus was the way I answered a specific question. I don't want to go into any specifics on it, just in case. You know. But they particularly liked my answer, and they said that was a that carried some weight, and they're just. So I felt proud of myself. It was only the third or fourth interview that I've ever done in my life. So, so now I work for the university, and I've worked there since February. And what I do is my job title is technical support specialist 2. So I'm a tier 2 technical support, but I don't do help desk stuff. So a typical help desk is you sit at your computer desk and your little cubicle in your office, and you answer telephones, answer email chats, all that kind of fun stuff. I don't do any of that. I actually I do monitor a ticketing system, yes, but that's not my main job duty. My main job duty is I'm actually a mobile technician. What I do is I go around and do pretty much mostly installation work at all 5 of my college's campuses around North Georgia, North and Central Georgia. So that's what I do. I go install projectors, smart boards, displays, confidence monitors, all that kind of fun stuff, digital signage. It's a whole host of stuff, and then I just kind of help out where needed. So, and I really enjoy it. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't have applied for the job if I didn't think I would actually enjoy it. But there's always so much to learn with this. Like it's like my coworkers. Well, they're still technically my bosses, but we're kind of, at least on paperwork, they're my bosses, but we kind of all consider ourselves fairly equal in person. Anyway, what they say is most people don't realize AV is actually a field in and of itself unless you end up in it, because most people just assume it's pushing a TV around on a cart from a library or something, or running a soundboard for a theater or something. Yeah, that's AV, and that's its own sub department or whatever. But at least in the type that I do is a whole lot more technical and a whole lot broader. So, like I said, I go around and I install projectors and control systems and smart boards, confidence monitors, digital signage. So there's a whole lot more than just running your soundboard or putting on a video presentation for a class or something like that. You got to know how to program these control systems that are they are proprietary. There's proprietary equipment. It's a proprietary system. You got to know how to set it up, get it configured, make it so that anybody can walk in and use it.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. It's always changing. There's always something new to learn. And I've been here a year, almost a year and a half now, including my student worker time. And I've learned quite a lot since then. And I mean, heck, even today, I even learned a couple of new things today. So almost every day I'm learning something else. And I'm telling you, not to bash college degrees, but for me personally, I actually got more out of my job as a student worker than I did getting the degree, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But that's just my particular situation. Um, but yeah, there's so much to learn, and it's changing on a quarterly basis, if not more often. I mean, you see new technology come out every year, new computers, new phones.
Yeah.
Like this fall, we're getting ready for the iPhone 15,
Oh
and I
God, the
know
iPhone 15.
I know. I've heard rumors. I don't hold my hopes out for anything. I just wait and see what happens. But I mean that's an annual thing for Apple is they typically release phones in the fall. I know Microsoft is getting ready to phase out Windows 10 here soon. I think if I remember correctly, that's either supposed to be later this year or early next year. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Windows 10 is actually going to be um, ended, and it's going to all shift to Windows 11
Oh
soon.
God,
So
no.
that's happening. Um, yeah, there's a it's changing
Yeah.
constantly, and you always have to be on top of it. At least if you're in the specific fields for it, because you always got to know what's happening. Is this compatible? Is this still going to work for my organization? Is this still going to work for me? I mean, it's not just about the organization. You still have your own stuff most of the time. You still have a cell phone, a computer.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure you're up to date with the latest security standards because you don't want to end up in some trouble in that way. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so you definitely want to stay on top of it if you can, and if you don't know what it is you're looking at or what you're hearing, definitely ask friends around you because more than likely, like I said in the beginning, um, there are definitely all kinds of people that kind of grew up with this. People uh, kind of like me that just kind of self-taught themselves a lot from a young age and have just kind of stayed in it, not necessarily deep inside it and super technical about every little thing about every little component, but we have enough knowledge to tell you, yeah, that's probably a good product. Yeah, that's a good brand, or I wouldn't necessarily trust that, but it'll do in a pinch kind of thing.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed how many times that happens.
Yeah.
But there's definitely something to be said for just asking people around and definitely getting second opinions, especially if you're not quite sure you hear correctly or understand something correctly, and even just getting second opinions from what somebody tells you. I mean, it's all a matter of perspective, right? What somebody
Yeah.
says works for them may not necessarily work for you. I think, Mary, you and I were even having a little bit of a conversation about that between Apple and Android. I was telling you how for me, I've always had an iPhone. I've used Android phones, yes, and Android tablets, but in the times that I've used them, I've just there's certain things that I've encountered that are either incompatible, they're only offered on Apple, or certain features that I personally liked more that are only available on the iPhone.
Yeah.
So it's kind of worked for me that way, and I understand every people want to customize their phones, right? Apple doesn't necessarily do a whole lot of that, especially in the way Android does. So if you want to customize your stuff, you definitely want to go for Android. And I will even admit, right now, the Android phones legitimately do have a better camera than Apple, at least in terms of still images. I can't speak for video, at least comparing Apple's Pro product line of iPhones, but I know just on
Yeah.
terms of the sheer megapixel number, the sheer number of megapixels, the Android phones definitely have a leg up over Apple. One of the rumors, the iPhone 15 is supposed to get a higher megapixel camera. So we'll see how that works. We'll see what that happens.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say it's not, the iPhones aren't perfect and the Androids aren't perfect. You definitely trade off features, trade off hardware levels.
Yeah.
And again, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for others.
Yeah.
Case in point, our software for our audiovisual control systems is not Mac compatible. It's not compatible on Apple's computers. We have to use a Windows computer. So I have a MacBook from college because it's what worked. I could have it up, ready to go. Don't have to worry about anything. It's ready to go as soon as I open it. The battery life lasts all week. I don't have to worry about it not dying halfway through class, that kind of thing. It's what worked for me. Um, it's not compatible with our software, so I can't use it for that. So my job had to buy me a Windows computer. Work has to buy work-related things, that kind of thing. They don't want you using your personal stuff because of in case it breaks or something, you know. Um, but but yeah, have to buy a Windows computer, and I don't have anything against Windows really. I mean, I can go all day about things because I remember getting Windows 10 when it was still just a very basic system that was only available to private developers, like way back. I can't even remember when this was. This was like 2013,
Yeah.
2012, 2013, something like that. Like it was probably 10 years ago now, and that's incredible because it feels like it was just a few years ago that Windows 10 came out.
Yeah.
But what I mean is I had it so early that now I can't confirm whether this was a bug because I was just trying out the system because I like seeing the stuff and being able to try it so I can recommend it to people or not recommend it to people. I remember when that system was so basic and stripped down and so broken that it wouldn't even shut down on its own. You'd click shut down and it would sit there and spin and spin and spin and spin. It wouldn't shut down. It would get hung up. And like I said, I don't know if that was a bug or if that was just me. I don't really know. But it was really cool to watch Windows 10 evolve in the icons, the design of the system, and just the way everything was laid out over the
Yeah.
course of about a year throughout the developer previews and then the public betas that subsequently came out after that. It was really cool to see it kind of evolve from something that felt like Windows 8, which was a massive failure,
Yeah.
that just kind of looked pretty. It turned into something that kind of felt like Windows 7 a little bit, but still a little bit had the uh, Windows 8 color and geometric designs. You know what I mean? How everything
Yeah.
kind of looked. Although, if you ask me, it's a hard tie or hard pressed for me to be able to decide between Windows XP and Windows 7 as my favorite operating systems because I grew up on Windows 7 on my personal computer at home on my laptop, and then I had Windows XP at school, and I love both of them. Now, if you ask me, the Windows XP system sounds are my favorite. Like, oh my gosh, I have copies of all of them, of all the systems actually. But I will say I liked Windows 7's graphics a lot. I liked
Hmm.
what they called the arrow, Windows arrow effect, how everything was kind of like glass panes and it was semi-transparent. Uh,
Yeah.
and it kind of glowed when you hovered over it or something. I really liked that. I thought that was really pretty
Yeah.
and really nice looking. It looked high class. It looked professional. I just liked it. And I was kind of that was one thing I've been kind of disappointed in the modern systems is they've kind of gone away from that and it's just a mundane solid shade of a color for
Yeah.
backgrounds and things like that. But it's not like I can do anything about it. But I loved those systems, and granted, you're not always going to be able to use them. So that's kind of what's happened nowadays, obviously. So you just kind of have to you like what you like, but eventually you're going to have to upgrade, and it doesn't mean you have to learn everything about it. It you just got to know how to use it. And I will say, at least in my experience, again, everybody's mileage differs. My
Yeah.
experience, Windows 11 has been better for me than Windows 10. The reason I
Oh,
say
okay.
that is because a couple of servers that I have, um, they're not Windows 11 compatible, mind you. They're a little on the older side, but
Hmm.
they're running Windows 10. Now, one of my servers, it is Windows 11 compatible, and it's running Windows 11 now.
Yeah.
Um, when it was running Windows 10, it pretty much crashed or hung up and froze about once a week, if not more often.
Yeah.
It just, I don't really know why. It just had problems, and it was just kind of a chore, I guess you'd say, just to have to remember to go in and restart it every once in a while, every, like what I said, about once every week. It was just kind of a chore. Uh, Now, I didn't have that happen on any of my other servers. In fact, I got a picture of it somewhere around here just because it was incredible. But one of my servers, until recently, um, I had it running for almost 70 days continuously before I had to restart it for updates. It had some critical updates waiting. And so then that
Wow.
never reset. But that was the longest I'd ever kept one of my computers running without restarting it. Was I think it was like 69 or almost 70 days. I think it was 69 or 70 days. And I was like, man, that's pretty good. But on that one computer, that one server that now I've upgraded it to 11, I've not had any of those issues since. It's
Oh.
been running smoothly. Uh, it's never really had any hard crashes in any of the applications because that was another thing. While the system, Windows 10 system, may not necessarily have crashed, the program that I was running kept crashing
Yeah.
or kept getting hung up and crashing. Sometimes it would crash the system, sometimes not. Um, so I never really knew what it was that was causing that. And to be perfectly honest, just because restarting the computer fixed the problem, I wasn't really all that motivated to dive into it and solve it, especially once I found out a new system was coming around. Um, so ever since then, ever since I moved to 11, it's been working. Now, what's interesting, and not probably not a lot of people know this, Windows 11 is essentially Windows 10 with a new look.
Yeah.
To use a car analogy, under the hood, it's the same engine. It's just in a different body. Really and
Yeah.
truly, Windows 10 is, or Windows 11 is Windows 10 with just a little bit of different visual effects
Yeah.
and things like that. When I found that out, I was like, you know what? That's actually kind of cool. Um, in my opinion, it seems kind of cheap of Microsoft to do that because then it doesn't really feel like a new edition of a system. It just kind of feels like they touched up something or did something like they do in their feature updates. It
Yeah.
just kind of feels like they just did one major overhaul and then just slapped a new name on it to keep up with changing times and all that. Like, it doesn't really feel that new or that modern. It still feels like Windows 10 to me. It just on the computers that I've been using it on, it seems to run smoother most of the time, or majority of the time, and it doesn't crash as often as it did with Windows 10 for
Yeah.
me. And again, everybody's mileage varies. Linux is another system, obviously open source. Um, I know a lot of people like Linux for, well, I shouldn't say obvious because not everybody would know it. The main advantage to Linux is you can customize the heck out of that thing, out of that system. You can add just about any little thing you want, and if it doesn't have it, you can write it yourself and do it yourself.
Yeah.
So, say you want a particular feature, you want a particular thingamabob. Well, if it's not available, that somebody's already made it, or that you don't like the specific way they implemented it, you can just write your own, and you can have your very own system. And the other part of it being open source is you can kind of take it, the base of it, and build on it. In fact, that's how Apple is. I know a lot of people probably know this because Apple was very widely used way back in the day, like in the 80s and 90s. It was
Yeah.
huge. Um, but Apple is still based on a Unix foundation, which is essentially the same thing as Linux.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a really cool thing. So that when people talk about how secure Apple is, well, that's just because it's built differently. It's still built on the basic old Unix stuff. I shouldn't say old because it's not like it's running archaic software.
Yeah.
It's just it uses the same basic programming fundamentals that were there back when these systems first started coming out. Um, and it's just built differently.
Yeah.
It's no lie, and there is proof that Apple is inherently more secure than Windows, verifiably, because they don't program the uh, for the metaphor we use is backdoor. For those that don't know, that's essentially a way to get into a program or computer system intentionally. It's kind of a uh, like quite literally the back door on your house with the key under the mat. That's probably the best way to describe it. Um, yes, it's a vulnerability because somebody can exploit that, gain access to your computer, steal your information, all that kind of stuff. So you got to be careful with that. That's a drawback from Windows. Microsoft is pretty buggy. They implement a lot of features without necessarily testing them because Windows is used on a lot of different platforms. So I was actually having this conversation at work. Um, Windows, the reason it has as many issues as it does, and subsequently, consequently, as many vulnerabilities, is because it's used on such a wide range of platforms. You've probably heard of all the different versions and editions of Windows. So, take for example, you have Windows 10 Home, you have Windows 10 Pro, you have Windows 10 Enterprise, you have embedded Windows, which are embedded is, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's basically an umbrella term encompassing a range of different things that
Yeah.
Windows runs on. So Microsoft has to develop their system to be able to run on a lot of hardware that they don't really necessarily know how it's being engineered or how it works, right?
Yeah.
Apple, on the other hand, they don't have to do that. They design their own computers. And it's a major point of contention for Apple because people like to customize their computers and be able to work on them themselves. Yes, that is a real sticking point. But at the same time, if you don't need to do that and you just want it to work, well, Apple's a
Yeah.
logical choice because it's put together by a manufacturer that in house tests it and optimizes it. And then they write their own system for it. And verifiably, the data does speak for itself. Apple
Yeah.
is proven better for work and office, and for that matter, college, schoolwork, than a Windows computer. It's
Yeah.
faster, it's more optimized, it's more secure. And the reason is because Apple just writes a system for their hardware. It's their own ecosystem. Quite literally, Apple's um, biggest plus is actually what gets them a lot of heat from the IT community, from people that are critical of them.
Mm.
So, and that feeds in the whole thing of, well, everybody's mileage varies. Um, I told you earlier, I got a MacBook Pro for college. I had originally gone with a Windows computer, but I had some issues with it. And at the time, I had it sent back to the manufacturer for warranty services. And I was coming up on finals. I had labs due. This was during the height of the chip shortage. Laptops, quality laptops, mind you, in my opinion. I only buy gaming class laptops because they're meant for rougher, uh, rougher usage. So
Yeah.
in my opinion, they're more durable. Enterprise laptops, they're overpriced consumer grade laptops. Is how I put it.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I'm getting at is I bought a really nice gaming laptop. It was expensive, yes, but that's the one I went with originally. Well, had some problems with it, had to send it back for warranty. And like I said, finals for that particular semester, I had labs coming up that were due. And again, it was in the height of the chip shortage. Not very many computers were available. And of the ones that were, even fewer of the higher end ones. Obvious reasons everybody would buy the higher end ones, all the gamers.
Yeah.
Um, and so the only thing that was in stock anywhere that I would actually consider was a MacBook Pro. The Apple store, 30 minutes, 45 minutes ish down the road from me. I went over there the next day and I was like, look, I need a laptop. You guys get me the best one you got in stock right now. And that's
Mm.
what I went with.
Yeah.
Um, so now later on, I ended up trading it in and getting a more souped up one. That would be the
Yeah.
best way to put it, I guess.
Um.
Um, and stuff, but
Hey, Star.
I've not had issues. What's up?
Would you like to continue talking about this on the next episode of this? Because I actually have to go to do some things.
Sure.
All right.
Okay.
So, question.
Sure.
Would you like to be the co-host of this?
I can sure be the co-host as much as I'm available, of course.
Yeah. I'll try and plan around your schedule.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. But would you like to help me end off this podcast episode?
Sure. How do you want me to do that? I don't know what I'm doing.
Basically, you want to just like say something funny, and I just,
It's kind of ironic because I'm usually good at cracking the good jokes, but usually they're situational, and you just kind of have to be in the right situation. And amazingly, I'm just drawing a blank on something. It's just not coming to mind. But yeah, I guess I can just say thanks for joining. Be more than happy to see you on the next one, and I hope to. So, yeah.
All right. I'll see y'all
All right.
in the next stream and possibly podcast. Yeah. Woohoo.
Yeah.